This is a Pilot V pen, and I just have it here so I can focus on this paper and it won't be crazy looking. But what we're going to talk about today is this Jinhao 991 fountain pen, this little $1.25 fountain pen that I bought a while back, and I made a video with it and I described the pen, and then it sat in my cup for quite some time. I bought it in this set of pens, and then proceeded to leave it in my mug for around 4 to 6 weeks, where it has been sitting nib up, waiting to be, I don't know, either cleaned or written with. So I decided, let's find out if it's going to write. Let's see if this cheap pen will actually write. It's got a little cup in the top of it to keep it from getting dry. And you can see in the nib section, you can see in the section that there's still ink in there. I can see a bubble inside the reservoir, inside the piston converter, and this ink is still liquid, so it hasn't dried out that much in 6 weeks. And I can see that there's a bit of ink in the fins, and if I can see it when I look closer using this, but I doubt that you can see anything. In fact, I know you can't see anything because I can see what you see too. And there is nothing really in there. There's some dried ink, but it's not going to run. So we will simply try to get it running by tapping it gently. Now this is a steel nib pen, so we can tap a little bit more, but really you never want to tap too hard. Just pretty much bouncing it on its nib and seeing it's already starting to make little dots. I can see the little dots here. And yeah, it's amazing. It's actually starting to write. So we should be able to get this pen started. Let's see if it will break it up and break through. Now the ink in this pen is Fountain Pen Revolution Mardi Gras ink, and it's a water-based ink. It's a sheening and shading ink. So it does have some particulate in it that can clog the fins and the little capillaries in the feed, but you can see that it's starting to break it up. Now that's either the liquid draining down and reactivating the ink, or the dyes in the ink, or it is ink traveling through from the section and breaking up some whatever might be in its path. Now, when we get the ink traveling into that section, there are a bunch of fins in the section where the ink can either work its way around or it can break down the obstruction. Uh, Liquid inks like this, water-based inks, will usually reactivate without too much trouble, but this one seems to be a little stiff, and that might be caused by an air bubble. There might be an air bubble in there, so we need to try to work that ink, and by gently abrading the paper with the nib of the pen, it can cause that vibration can cause the ink to draw down. That capillary action can start pulling the ink using gravity in this case. And let's open this up and set this aside. It's already posted, so we don't need to worry about that. And I'm going to prime the feed. Now, when you prime, that simply means that I'm going to push the ink by turning the plunger up and forcing the ink up into the nib section, up into the grip section, and then up into the nib, and I can actually see it moving up, filling up those fins that are in the section. It's one of the nice things. That's why I chose these, actually, why I bought these demonstrator style pens. And yeah, this is starting to work now. So, and we can speed this up so that we don't have so much time just watching me draw. Now the ink is drawing up through capillary action and gravity, being drawn down through that nib section and over the feed into the capillaries of the feed and the fins of the feed. And this is being a dye-based ink, a water-based ink. The dye is reactivating as the ink is resaturating. So it shows that the inner cap that keeps the pen from drying out, that is up in the top of the snap cap on this pen, actually did a good job of keeping enough of a seal that the inks didn't dry out too much. Now, granted, it hasn't really been that long, but the pen is having no trouble writing now. It's working perfectly fine. And the ink is this Fountain Pen Revolution Mardi Gras ink is both sheening and shading, so it has little particles of glitter in it. But we can see how quickly this ink reactivates when I put water on it. You can see that the ink really does start to flow very quickly. And I'm not really seeing too much of a difference in the performance of the ink from the first time we inked this pen up and I drew that picture of the Mardi Gras girl to the performance of it now. It is breaking down. It doesn't look any more intense. And again, I'm seeing no signs that it's clumping or that it's clotting. And that's one of the issues that I get with the carbon black inks. Those inks tend to clot. The particulate, those are pigmented inks. So they actually have little microscopic bits of carbon in it. And when the pen sits too long, I do store pretty much all of my pens, I store them nib up. And if they sit a little too long, I have noticed that sometimes I can get some clumping in those pens. So when I go to rinse them out, little black specks might come out when I rinse those nibs or the converters. Sometimes there will be little clumps inside the converter. The diatramentus inks, on the other hand, I don't really get. I get flakes out of them, and I notice that they tend to layer underneath the nib sometimes, and it'll be like a varnishing of the underside of the nib. And I've actually had to take a little pen cleaner on the end of a Q-tip and just kind of gently massage those layers off of the bottoms of the nibs. That's why I like to use steel nibs for those diatramentus inks. Now we'll take this carbon ink and we'll put it into these other demonstrators. And I've got some other permanent inks that we will also put in there, and we'll see exactly what happens if they clump or clot or just get gummy, and let's see what happens.